Are you the kind of person who lets deadline after deadline keep on slipping into the future? Or maybe you have the best laid plans to hit that date that you told them you would, but you know what they say about the best laid plans? Maybe you're the type of person who holds yourself to insanely high standards and you will bend over backwards, sacrifice your firstborn, and walk across hot coals all at the same time just to make sure that that thing you promised they receive by 12 o'clock, they get by 11:59. In this episode of Content with Character, we're going to break down Gretchen Rubin's 4 tendencies and apply them to your marketing and business operations for a smoother, less stressful ride to accomplishing your goals. Welcome to Content with Character, the weekly podcast that'll give you the momentum you need to create content with more ease, clarity, and laughter. I'm your host, content copywriter Emily Aborn, and I'm all about unconventional marketing approaches. I believe in your big ideas, and I'm excited to help you share them in a way that's distinctly you. Hello. How are you doing on this fine Tuesday, or I guess whatever day it is for you? I am doing great. Thanks for asking. No, I'm glad to be back. I'm glad you're back. And I won't belabor too much in this intro, but I do have to share one thing with you because it's relevant to the topic at hand. This month, October, has been a little bit crazy for me, a little bit insane. And while I dread the word overwhelming and I really don't like the word busy, it's actually been both of those things, overwhelming and busy. So as such, I have had a hard time decompressing and de-stressing because, as you'll hear in this episode, I'm one of those people who, when she says she's going to do something, either to herself or promises it to someone else, she usually does it. And usually it's like 3 days before I promise it to the person, mind you. So while some of you are like, oh my God, that's amazing, you might be in awe of that or think it's a good thing, I assure you that, like your tendency, it is a blessing and a curse. And in this episode, I'm going to really show us, like, whatever your modus operandi is, it also is a blessing and a curse. That's what we're getting into. We're going to focus on hopefully making it more of a blessing, I guess, like dulling down one of the sides of that double-edged sword. I can't promise that I'm done with the cliche analogies and metaphors, but I can promise that I'm done with them for now. Speaking of cliche, that is exactly what I like to help small business owners avoid in their marketing and on their websites. For those of you who don't know, if this is your first time here or you're just unaware, I'm a copywriter. And if you don't know what a copywriter is, it is a person who writes things. I write things and stuff for business owners, kind of with the goal of helping them to get more clients and to bring people into their business, to increase their visibility. I'm also as you probably guessed by now, a podcast host, and I make for a pretty good podcast guest too, just saying, wink, wink. I'm a speaker, presenter on all things human relationship and community-based marketing. So that's really my sweet spot. If you ever listened to one of my episodes and you're like, oh my gosh, I just must connect with Emily, you can do that. You can just visit my website, emilyaborn.com. You also can head over to the show notes in any episode, and you'll always get links of everything that I refer to, and then links directing you to anywhere that you might want to go to connect with me. So that's it. That's the intro. I tried to keep it short and sweet. You can be the judge of whether or not I was successful, but I really want to get into today's topic. So I first learned about the 4 tendencies, I don't know, probably a decade ago. And basically the concept is this, okay? We all have 2 different kinds of expectations on us in life. There are outer expectations, which is like a deadline, answering that text from your friend, the Voxer messages that your friend sent you, a meeting on your calendar, bringing the dish that you told your sister you'd make for Thanksgiving meal. So those are outer expectations, things people expect from us. And then we also face inner expectations. And as I like to say, those are kind of like self-promises. Those are things that you expect of yourself. So think of like your resolutions, your goals, new habits, any self-imposed or unwritten rules that you have, okay? Keys to where these might be for you might lie in phrases like, oh, I'm the kind of person who, or I always, or I would never, or every day right? So it shows up in a multitude of different ways, but basically those are your inner expectations. So we have inner and we have outer expectations. How you approach and manage these expectations has a really big impact on your productivity, on your consistency, on your follow through, and also your ability to actually like achieve what you set out to do. So those big goals and dreams that you have, how you approach these expectations can impact your achieving of your goals. In the words of Gretchen Rubin, who came up with the 4 tendencies, your response to expectations determines your tendency. And the way Gretchen Rubin defines them is the 4 tendencies are upholder, questioner, obliger, or rebel. It's fun. I know. All right. If you don't know who Gretchen Rubin is, she is a New York Times bestselling author, podcaster, speaker, and creator of the 4 Tendencies framework. She also was the author of The Happiness Project. That was actually the book that first introduced me to her. My friend William gave it back to me in circa 2008. I really liked Gretchen's writing style. It's very like journalistic in nature, and also it's like personal journalism or something. So I really liked her writing style, and I hopped aboard learning about the 4 tendencies soon thereafter. So like I said, it was quite a while ago. Actually, we might even be going back more than a decade. So I will make sure that I include in those show notes the links to Gretchen's website where you can find her books, her podcast, her 4 Tendencies quiz, which is super fun. And I'll mention that a couple times throughout. And also the book itself, which I think I already said. So you can find everything in the show notes and at her website. What I really like about the 4 tendencies and knowing what your tendency is that it helps you to answer questions about yourself, like why others can rely on you, but maybe you let yourself down, or vice versa. Why people think that you ask too many questions. Why it can also help you to speak the language to other people once you've identified their tendency or once they've shared their tendency, and it can make for a lot more smooth collaborations. So today we're going to just run through the 4 and talk about how they apply to your marketing and your business overall. And hopefully I'll give you just like a couple little tips for each one to help yourself out so you can like know a little bit about what to do to make it, like I said, a little bit more of a blessing and less of a curse. So some of you may be able to self-identify just with me sharing about these, but definitely take her quiz and check out the book because obviously it's way more detailed than I can be in a podcast. And the quiz really will help you to figure out which one you are. The 4 are upholders. These are the folks who are readily responding to both outer and inner expectations. The kind of like mantra that goes with this one is discipline is freedom. So discipline is freedom to these folks, and they will do what they say they're going to do for others and also for themselves. Then we have the questioners, and the questioners, as you probably guessed, they question everything. They will meet expectations, inner or outer expectations, if it makes sense to them, which this does not mean it needs to make sense to you. Basically, they will do what you say or what they say if they know why. Then we have obligers. Obligers, they meet the expectations of other people, but they really do struggle to meet their own inner expectations, which can be a huge letdown for them. They will often do more for others than they would do for themselves. They will follow through for others, but they may compromise on their promises to themselves. And then we have the rebels. And the rebels, they just don't like expectations. They don't like internal expectations, and they don't like external expectations. And I think that, in fact, if you expect something from them, it just makes them want to do it less. It's like the reverse psychology, right? Don't make me do it. Don't make me do X, Y, Z. They like to make their own rules, as a rebel does. So what does this have to do with content creation, marketing, and entrepreneurship? Well, I actually think it has a lot to do with all of those things because your tendency can cause you to, like I said at the beginning, achieve or not achieve your goals. It can help you to make better decisions, meet deadlines, follow through on plans and strategies that you set for yourself. It can cause you less stress and internal pressure, and it can help you to uphold promises that you say for yourself. So we're going to dive into each of these and just share those strengths and weaknesses, and then hopefully give you a couple ideas to improve your outcomes, assuming that you would like to improve your outcomes. So someone smarter than me may also have more information and be able to correct me on this, but I think that I can do a decent job. I also think you can have a couple of tendencies, probably 2 top tendencies, and maybe actually one sort of complements or helps the other. Maybe they completely oppose one another at some times. That could be fun. Okay, so let's start with the upholders. Like I said, I do think that this is me. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I will do it. If I tell myself I'm going to do something, I will do it. Now, this is often to my own detriment because I have gone ahead and put some arbitrary date or arbitrary pressure on myself or made some authority kind of over me that doesn't need to be there. And so I can lose sight of why I'm doing the thing in the first place. And I'm going to give you an example in just a minute, but let's go ahead and continue with the strengths of the upholder. I always like to start with the positive before I take you down. No, just kidding. Okay, so the upholder, it's great because we are reliable, we are self-motivated, we're good at making a plan and sticking to a plan. We set goals and we stick to them, and it does not take very much to convince us to deliver on deadline. In fact, if you're me, it's probably going to be there 3 days early, if I have anything to say about it. In their marketing, upholders tend to be very consistent and very steady. So you can see that this creates a very reliable, trustworthy, dependable type of business owner. Your podcast always comes out on Tuesday. Your email always comes out on Tuesday. You always follow up with me after this thing. It's a big asset to clients, customers, family, everybody in your life, yourself. Really, it's very good to know about yourself that when you make a promise, you will follow through. And that is honestly, in my opinion, 50% of successful business ownership right there. The organization and efficiency piece, also coveted. That's also a strength. So keeping on track means that you can keep your word. And so keeping on track is really, really important. So organization helps us to keep our word. Now, where upholders get stuck big time is that they can be rigid. They can have trouble adapting to change. It can even come across as stubborn in some instances. New strategies, plot twists. This is all very, very disheveling to them. They can feel like either they're letting themselves down or they are failing if they miss something one tiny time, right? Which, between you and me, most likely no one else even noticed. They have trouble sometimes switching gears and also readapting. And additionally, they might forget to stop, smell the flowers, and ask why. What am I even doing here? Recently, I discovered something in my own life that I was tracking, minutely, and it ended up being, really, really pointless. So if you do want to read that story to know exactly what it was and what I was tracking and how I went about changing it, I will include a link to my Substack article on it in the show notes. But at first, it was good. Tracking was for a purpose, and I had I was trying to find a solution. But after a while, I realized I was just tracking to track, and actually upholding my tracking was sort of making me miserable and feel hopeless because it wasn't changing what I was trying to track. So I had to stop myself, ask myself why, and loosen up and let go of it entirely. So upholders, if that is you, that is for us. What we need to do, some of the strategies, some of the tips we can do to help dull that double-edged sword is that we want to practice flexibility. We want to be a little bit more open to change. We want to be open to feedback and new ways of being and doing. Just open up the possibilities to different ways of being even more. This may also look like letting go of responsibilities and commitments that don't actually serve us, establishing boundaries, and then also considering how your boundaries can be helpful in giving you a little bit more flexibility in what you're upholding and how. And again, we also need to ask for help when we are taking on too much or running the risk of burning out, because we will do it. And that is not always a good thing. So I practice this with myself in little ways, but sometimes I will not stick with a plan that I made for myself. I may say something at the end of an episode that I'm going to talk about next week, and then I will change it. Or I will leave something a little bit messy for myself or a little bit imperfect. Or it could be as simple, and I kid you not, this is how ridiculous this is. It could be as simple as like, I'm not going to fold my laundry until later, or I'm going to leave it half folded and finish the rest later. And I know, again, that sounds really, really silly, but that is what's happening over here. And it's baby steps. It's baby steps to let go of some of the rigidity and embrace some of the flexibility. Okay, obligers, we are headed your way. Are you ready? Are you ready? You were hoping I would forget about you. I know. You wanted to just jump right over and help those upholders. I know how you work. But the spotlight is now on you, so here we go. Obligers sometimes identify themselves as people pleasers or recovering people pleasers. They often speak the love languages, all the love languages of somebody else. They are great at delivering on their promises to others and being responsive and being there when someone else needs them. You can see a theme here. They make really good team players. This is their strength. They are very good at building relationships and community-oriented businesses. They take feedback really well in collaborations. They're dependable with deadlines when you give them like that external accountability, and they will often help work with and tailor things, customize, personalize things to the needs of others, which is so fantastic in your engagement, in your content and marketing, in when you're offering personalized business approaches and services and solutions. So fantastic, so many strengths. The Achilles heel, my dear obliger, are you ready for it? Can you already see what it might be? You may struggle with your own goals and your own self-promises. And that to say that if there is no external pressure, it's like, well, who's got the time? You know, when it comes to your own marketing, that's the thing you're going to put on the back burner first. You might struggle to stay consistent if you don't have that external accountability. And obligers can also often say yes too much to others and neglect their own needs, which again can lead to burnout. They may overcommit to client projects or external expectations, leaving little time for their own marketing, their own business efforts, because they really, quite frankly, have deprioritized them a little bit. So I will say that to some extent, I do this. When I get very overwhelmed with other people's stuff, and there's just like a lot of that on my plate, of course, I'm good at upholding my word, so I will go dark on my own stuff first. But a true obliger takes this to the next level. They have a really hard time prioritizing their own stuff in the first place. And they may also have a hard time setting limits, boundaries, like that kind of thing. So 3 ideas for my sweet, sweet obligers. Number 1 is simply create external accountability wherever you can, because that is how you thrive, whether that be co-working, a productivity coach. I know one, by the way, I'm happy to recommend. Systems when other people are counting on you, but you also need to make time for your own things. Masterminds, collaborating, and finding other people who can help you stay on track. That's really, really going to help you. Number 2 is just like prioritizing. And I know this is so easy to say and harder to do, but like really prioritizing yourself and putting boundaries in place to help protect your time and your energy, because you are balancing and juggling a lot of things, and you also need to make space for your own business too. So one of my personal tips for you, and the way I like to do this, is to block off dedicated time in your calendar every single week for your own business. I don't care if it's Friday afternoon, Monday morning, Tuesday evening, but block that time off and then tell somebody that you're doing that. Or better yet, do it alongside somebody else, because accountability is really, really what you need. And then lastly, for obligers, I just think batching can really help to avoid some of the overwhelm. So if you're kind of sitting down in one session doing all kinds of things, you're not scrambling then to keep up, and it feels like less overwhelming. So outsourcing is an equally good option here, because then you can be focusing on serving your clients and still be able to focus on your own business and stay top of mind there. All right, time for my questioners. My husband is a bit of a questioner. My friend Stacy, she is notorious for the phrase, "but why though?" She is a true questioner. And if her brain or somebody else's brain cannot convince her that there's a good reason to do it, she's like, no. So, like I said, I found my husband in this category as well, which means I need to just present him with reasons or facts or information that he might need to make a decision to know what to do and when. Questioners tend to be deep analytical thinkers. They love logical reasons. They love whys behind taking action, and they kind of want all those details to ensure that the decisions they're making have been well researched and are data driven. So is there a reason behind it? Okay, fine. I'll do it. They are definitely efficient. They don't like to waste time, energy, or money. So if it's not a good use of those resources, then it's not for them. Once you convince them, though, or once they convince themselves, they are going to be very self-motivated to follow through and do it, and they will stick to it. So if you believe in it, if they believe in it, they're signed, sealed, and delivered. Now, what's the weakness? I know. You're like, that doesn't actually sound like it has any weaknesses. Trust me, they don't think they do either. Just kidding, questioners. Just kidding. I love you. Okay. Couple questions or couple issues I see for the questioners is that they can actually get stuck in questioning. They can get stuck in analysis paralysis. And sometimes you just need to get started and not have some amazing philosophical reason as to why. So I think it's almost like asking yourself, okay, is now a good enough time to start? Is this enough information to just go ahead and move forward? Look, I am with you. I love a good overthinking session myself, but it realistically, let's be honest, it can go a little bit too far. So they can also be a little bit over skeptical. They can second guess maybe the advice or strategies of other people or their own decisions. They might dismiss marketing best practices if they don't see a logical reason behind them. So there's not a lot of room for let's just try it and see, which can prevent them from trying new or creative things, or just trying things one time or testing the waters. So all kind of things to think about. And I would say this is probably very relevant for me in other aspects of my personality, but not on how I will actually follow through with something. So a couple ideas for questioners. One is setting time limits for your research period. Okay, I'm going to give myself this amount of time, and then I'm going to avoid analysis paralysis by coming up with a decision. So after the time is up, I will commit to moving forward one way or the other, or not at all, and I will put the decision aside based on the information at hand. Also, if you want to kind of further set yourself up for success, you can bring somebody else in who can help guide you through those options. Number 2 is creating structure around flexibility. So questioners, like the upholders, they do very well with structure, but they may benefit from having rules for experimenting. So creating some experiments, but the experiments can have rules. So then you have space to throw a little bit of spaghetti at the wall, but it's not so risky. You don't have to overthink it because you're doing this with low stakes stuff and you're kind of evaluating it from there. It's your chance to really dip your toe in the water and see how it goes in a safe, a structured way. So lastly, not leastly, one of the most I'm scared of is the rebels. Again, I am a rebel in other ways, sort of, kind of, not really. Okay, I'm not a rebel at all. But when it comes to expectations, I'm definitely not a rebel. Rebels are creatives and non-conformists. They thrive on freedom, dancing to the beat of their own drum. I know. I promised you I'd try to stop with the metaphors and the cliches, but I really have done a terrible job of that this entire episode. So apologies. Maybe it was because I am a little bit of a rebel. Anyway, back to the rebels. Rebels are always bringing their own innovative and creative ideas to their business and marketing, and sometimes That's the entire focus. And so then that means that they actually have a really, really hard time sticking to one thing. They like to break rules and prioritize their own desires and values, which you can see this is a huge gift. This is such a gift to put your values and what you believe and what you're drawn to first and foremost. It's a huge strength. People are very drawn to that realness, raw, relatable, knowing you're all in all the time, right? And you're probably really good at finding your people and weeding out the rest. However, on the flip side, you might struggle with consistency, routines, external expectations, internal expectations, follow through, making plans, sticking with the plans. You might be a little bit sporadic, which could hurt your brand visibility or your reliability over time. And you're probably allergic to any and all shoulds, which means that it's hard to take feedback or do as other people might recommend. Even if it's a good thing, even if it's beneficial, that might mean you miss out on things that could actually be beneficial or helpful for you. So some solutions and strategies for you. I just have 3. One is to use your marketing as your way to release some of that freedom. Use your marketing as a way to feel free. Create plans and systems that don't box you in, but actually feel very freeing. So maybe it's this. Maybe you even frame your marketing as this is where I express myself freely and I make decisions as I feel I want to and on my own terms. And then when it comes time to implement on that plan, you look at your plan and you say, this is me expressing myself freely and making decisions on my own terms, right? So you kind of are just reframing things for yourself. I'm choosing to post this. I'm choosing to share this because I really want to connect with my listeners or speak to somebody who needs my help or because I feel excited about this thing, whatever the thing is, but reframing it to I'm choosing to do this. It's kind of a little bit of self-reverse psychology. Number 2 is to make your marketing actually fun. Make your marketing fun and exciting and fresh and creative and avoid routines whenever possible. This might mean you do need to change up your format. You do need to experiment with new ideas. And you just need to use marketing as a platform for self-expression and stop trying to come up with this perfect plan and strategy for quote unquote your marketing and your content. Just tap into that rebellious energy, okay? Break away from the status quo and get somebody on board that can help you if you do need direction or you do want strategy or you do want to take their feedback. You can always do that too. You can always bring somebody else in to help. But I say go for it. Host those unconventional events or launch that unexpected marketing campaign and don't be afraid to shake things up because that's your strength. If you're a rebel, I'd say own it and bring in other people who can help support you in that. And maybe they even need to know that about you up front. Number 3 is really connecting to who you are and letting go of some of the rigidity and structure and plans and frameworks and deadlines and all of that. So instead of relying on deadlines or external pressures or somebody else's system, use who you are to be your motivator and connect back with the values, your real sense of who you are, the real impact of what you want to make, and use that as your motivation. Use that as your driver. Use that as your personal deadline to motivate yourself. So what I mean by that is your marketing actually can help you stay true to that vision. It can help you stay true to yourself and make the change that you want to see in the world. So view it as that. View it as this personal freedom and not an obligation. Okay, and we did those a little bit faster than I thought. So yay us. Don't you feel good? I do. Okay, to recap real quick, the 4 are upholders. Those respond readily to both outer and inner expectations. Questioners, they question everything. They'll meet expectations if it makes sense to them. Obligers meet the deadlines and expectations of others, but they do struggle to meet their own inner expectations. And then rebels, they do not love expectations. they sort of make their own rules. So those are the 4. And I do want to encourage you to take that quiz on Gretchen Rubin's website. I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes. I'd love to know which one you are after reflecting on this a little bit and see how you can implement it, how it applies to you both in the strength sense and in the weakness sense in your business and your marketing. And I hope you are back next week, because next week we're going to go into the 4 gates of speech that your marketing and your content and your words can pass through to ensure that you're saying things consciously. All right. I will chat with you then, and you know where to find me in the meantime. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Content with Character. If you loved the episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, and share it with someone else you know it could help. For more content and visibility tips, visit my blog at emilyaborn.com, and be sure to connect with me on Instagram at emilyaborn. I'd love to hear how this inspired you to take action.